But you look for three core characteristics to distinguish it as a destructive cult. Number one, an authoritarian leader who becomes an object of worship. Whatever the leader says is right. Whatever the leader says is wrong is wrong. And the leader typically has no meaningful accountability. There is this bait and switch con that takes place in cults, and it takes place in abusive, controlling relationships, where you think that the person that you're involved with is a loving and kind person, and they only show you what they want to show you initially to pull you in. A cult leader is a con man. The only difference between a conventional con man and a cult leader is a typical con man runs a con and then leaves town. A cult leader runs the same con on the same people indefinitely.
Today's interview from the Vault was recorded July 2020. Cult expert Rick Alan Ross, author of Cults Inside Out and founder of the Cult Education Institute, joins me to break down the psychology of destructive groups, from consulting on Ubisoft, on the video game Far Cry 5, to intervening in real cases like Nxivm. Rick explains the playbook cult leaders use: authoritarian leadership, indoctrination, isolation, gaslighting, and exploitation. Thank you for joining, and I bring to you Rick Alan Ross. Rick Alan Ross, how are you doing today?
Good, Eric. Nice to be on with you.
It's great to have you back. It's been a while. It's been about a year, I think, since you were on the show with the podcast. Now, I don't know if you were doing it at the time or intervening, I should say. You worked on Far Cry 5. What was that all about?
Well, it was Far Cry 5, of course, is part of the series of Far Cry. And the whole object of the game by Ubisoft is to bring you into a world that you can experience. And Dan Hay, the creative director of the Far Cry series, asked me to participate and be part of the team to create a game based on a cult, a fictitious cult, and its compound in Montana. And when you play the game, you're dropped in as part of a federal law enforcement team, and it goes sideways. It gets violent, it gets crazy, and you have to fight your way or find your way out. And it's a thrilling game. It went very well. And I traveled with Dan and the creative team as they rolled out Far Cry around the world. We went to Paris, to Sydney, Montreal, San Francisco, and the game, was very, very successful.
Well, how did you meet Dan?
I got a call from Ubisoft in Montreal, and they asked me would I be interested in working on the team, and that I would be their expert consultant who would give them ideas, information about cults, because they wanted to make the game as real as they possibly could, and they surely did. It's vividly real, kind of frighteningly real. Though there are groups that I've said in interviews are worse than the one depicted in Far Cry 5.
Oh, really? That was my next question. Like, Silence of the Lambs was based on a kind of a combination of three serial killers. Ed Gein, I believe. Bundy is a little bit in there, and others. Who was the cult based on?
Well, it was based, I would say it was a hybrid of several different groups. They had aspects of a group in Chile called Colonia Dignidad. And then they had aspects of the Waco Davidians, and then a group with a compound in Montana called Church Universal and Triumphant. So Church Universal was led by a woman. In Far Cry 5, there is this prophet who is the leader of the group, who looks a lot like David Koresh, and his name is Joseph Seed. And he leads this group that has a compound in Montana that is very similar to the Church Universal Triumphant. They're preparing for the end of the world. Joseph Cetus predicted doomsday. And the authorities are very worried about the violence of the group and the stockpile of weapons that they have, which would be very much like the Waco Davidians. And the group is Bible based, so it is also like the Waco Davidians in that aspect. Where it's also like Colonia Dignidad is that the group in Far Cry 5 has a drug that they use to manipulate and control people, and it's called bliss. And that drug is similar to the drugs that were given to the followers of Colonia Dignidad in that compound at the foot of the Andes in Chile.
What drug was that?
It was a combination of, basically tranquilizers to make the people docile, more obedient, submissive.
Okay, almost like was it like one of those zombie drugs that I
Yeah,
heard
I,
about?
I, I would say it made people kind of flat. And this was a group that was that was led by a man who was a pedophile. His name was Paul Schaefer. He's now dead. And he would molest the children and recruit children into the compound so that he could sexually exploit them.
I guess it's a good to be king. Isn't that really the reason behind a lot of cult leaders? Or am I wrong? Just to be able to have as much sex and power as they can when living off of other people?
Yeah, I think it's a business plan if you look at it that way, because a lot of cult leaders are very rich. I mean, when L. Ron Hubbard, the founder and leader of Scientology, died, his estate in 1986 was $600 million, and
Mm,
Scientology today supposedly is worth over 2 billion. And there have been other purported cult leaders who have also been very wealthy. For example, Keith Raniere, who had two Seagram's liquor heiresses as his bankers. He went through about 150, $200 million of their money. And when they arrested him for sexual trafficking and tax fraud and so on, he had millions of dollars in a personal account that he controlled. So a lot of these people, yes, they get money, they get power, they get sex, and this is what they're in it for. Typically, they're deeply narcissistic people
mm.
and often are described as psychopaths, sociopaths. That is, they have no conscience,
Right.
empathy for anyone.
You're breaking up a little bit. Hopefully this will settle down.
Yeah, there we go, I think.
Okay, I've got sound. Um, Hopefully the image starts coming back. Hmm. Are you hearing me all right? Oh, are we back yet?
I I can see you, but I
Okay,
maybe
perfect.
my image. Okay, there we go.
Yeah, we're back again. Okay, so you were talking about the charming, narcissistic to psychopath um, selection we have as cult leaders.
Yeah, psychopaths can be very charming. Keith Raniere, David Koresh, Jim Jones, all of them could be very charming, and they were very charismatic people. Well, Raniere, not so much. I mean, he was kind of uh, kind of a milk toast, kind of not very exciting person. But
Hmm.
David Koresh and Jim Jones were very good speakers. And of course, Charles Manson had a way of manipulating people and charming people as well.
What do you think? And I think I brought this up with you before, but it would be fun to explore it again. There's something out now that my good friend Chris Lockhead calls hustle porn. And it is a lot of these entrepreneur types that are out
saying hustle, 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 and they're kind of building these giant followings. And I don't know if you could consider them a scam or a full-blown cult or just a business. Do you have any thoughts, or have you looked into any of these people?
Well, yeah, many multi-level marketing schemes, in my opinion, the people who become involved in them typically don't make much money, and it's the people at the top of the pyramid that are the founders and the early distributors that make the money because that's the way it's set up. So there often are very charismatic, very authoritarian people who run an MLM. Keith Raniere, who ran Nxivm, initially was an MLM guru. He had something called Consumer Byline that was
Mm,
put out of business by many attorney generals of various states suing him until he basically folded and went out of business. But he started out as a multi-level marketing guru. But there are three core characteristics that would define a group, whether it be a business, a philosophical group, a religious group, a martial arts group, a meditation group. It could be anything. But you look for three core characteristics to distinguish it as a destructive cult. Number one, an authoritarian leader who becomes an object of worship. Whatever the leader says is right is right. Whatever the leader says is wrong is wrong. And the leader typically has no meaningful accountability.
is it always
No,
one, or could it be a core group?
it could be two or three people, but most
Mhm.
commonly it's only one person, and it's usually a man. Though there have been a number of women that have very successfully led groups called cults, such as Guru Ma Elizabeth Clare Prophet in Montana with the Church Universal and Triumphant. But then the second characteristic would be that the leader has a process of indoctrination, of training, in which he breaks people down using well known influence techniques and
Mhm.
coercive persuasion, such as control of the environment in a compound. To shut out any alternative perspectives. And basically, the leader breaks people down, changes them, and then locks them in to this new way of thinking in which they are subservient to the leader. And then finally, the third characteristic is that the leader uses undue influence to exploit people and do damage. And
Mm.
that varies by degree from group to group. So some leaders just want the money, some want money and sex. Others become even more nefarious. They are involved in criminal activities, and they may require people to refrain from medical care. So people are dying from medical neglect. They may abuse children in the group through excessive corporal punishment, or in the case of
Mhm.
a cult like Colonia Dignidad, the children were sexually abused.
Wow. You mentioned about controlling the environment, all that. What popped in my head, to kick back to the MLM deal and the guru deal, is in some of these seminars, they might be a 2 or 3 day retreat, and they literally don't let people out,
Yeah,
even for
yeah.
emergencies or anything else. And, these are, business discoveries and how to be your bigger you. And there's people in the back of the room where um, folks get to sign up and spend more money.
Yes, I was a consulting expert for the prosecution at the trial of James Arthur Ray. Ray, as you may remember, was a seminar training guru, and he eventually had this one retreat that was set up in Sedona, Arizona,
Was
and
that when they suffocated or?
three people died in his makeshift wannabe sweat lodge. And
Mm,
James Arthur Ray made millions and millions of dollars selling these seminars, and people would come into them. The environment would be very controlled. Uh, Essentially, he controlled those people to death in his so called sweat lodge.
didn't he get out and then get into trouble and go back to prison or something like that?
Actually, no. He did go to jail. He was convicted of negligent homicide, and then he served about 2 years, and then he was released. And he's back in business. I mean,
Of
he's
course he
been
is.
he's conducting
It pays.
seminar. It pays, and so he's conducting seminars in like Las Vegas. Last I heard, he is living in Las Vegas, and that's his hub. And he's back in the same old
Wow.
where he's doing seminar training that is very expensive, and then he tries to pressure people in the seminar to upsell them so that they will pay more and more. And many people become so embroiled in this they can financially break themselves.
Okay, well, good. We have some questions rolling in now, which is awesome. That's the point behind this. And folks, please put questions here in the chat and I will ask them as we go. First one is mega a cult? This is being reported as to whom Epstein and Maxwell were involved with or in.
I think that that from what we're seeing, Jeffrey Epstein was a kind of cult leader. I
Hmm.
wouldn't call it a highly organized cult, but he certainly used gaslighting, mystical manipulation, influence techniques to recruit and retain these girls that he exploited and horribly took advantage of. And but I don't think it was organized quite tightly as a cult. And I think, but he was a personality that was charismatic, that he engendered dependency and submission from the girls, and he certainly affected their thinking and their perception of what was going on. I think many of them felt mesmerized by Epstein.
Interesting. You had mentioned that about uh, what popped in my head, especially with him, is because of pedophilia and well, whatever that he groomed, and that's something I've talked to FBI agents about. Is that similar to a cult maneuver? You know, grooming potential victims for molestation or grooming the public to get them as part of the cult?
Well, in my book, Cults Inside Out, there's a chapter devoted to abusive, controlling relationships. And that's where you have someone who's grooming a target and they're lulling someone into a relationship with a plan of basically dominating and controlling and very likely abusing that person. And if you will, an abusive, controlling relationship can be seen as a cult of two.
Mm,
One is the abusive controlling partner who dominates and manipulates the victim, who really has no idea initially what they're getting involved in. There is this bait and switch con that takes place in cults, and it takes place in abusive controlling relationships where you think that the person that you're involved with is a loving and kind person, and they only show you what they want to show you initially to pull you in. And then as
mhm.
they pull you in deeper, they begin to isolate you from your friends, from your family, and manipulate you by gaslighting you, which is a term used to describe mystically almost manipulating people
Mhm.
in a kind of planned routine that to the victim seems to be spontaneous, but is
Right.
really premeditated and planned by the abusive controlling partner. And the term gaslighting comes from this fantastic movie
Mhm.
uh, that was made in the 30s with the actress Ingrid Bergman as the victim and Charles Boyer as the abusive controlling partner. And the movie is called Gaslight.
Right. And it's a matter of she doesn't know if she's crazy or not, and he's just manipulating it the whole way through. And you had mentioned about the coercive relationship, and I think I talked to you about it before. It made me think of pimps.
Very, very, very much in line with the movie Gaslighting and with an abusive, controlling relationship. Women who come under the control of a pimp, frequently that person comes on romantically and grooms them
Mhm.
and then pulls them in and bit by bit takes them to a place that they never intended to go. Very much like a cult experience. What you see is not what you get, And it's really people are tricked and trapped into these situations, and then they feel powerless, they feel helpless, and it's a kind of learned helplessness that they're schooled in, that they're trained in, and that people like James Arthur Ray, David Koresh, Keith Raniere are very adept at. They can identify people's vulnerabilities, and then they drill down and they just crack them open and then take advantage of the individuals that come under their influence.
Yeah, I have one more before I get back to the other questions, but would you say it's a fair statement to compare it to boiling the frog in terms of
Uh,
none of this happens right away? I mean, we have this impression that people walk into the building and all of a sudden, poof, they're mind wiped or whatever, and we're going, no, that's never going to happen. But doesn't it take place a lot more slowly? Like, you meet these people and they're your friends, and you get to go out to dinner with them, and they just seem to really care about you and what's going on. And over time, it just starts shifting a little bit, a little bit, a little bit, a little bit.
Well, yeah, Eric, what you say is true. The analogy has been given that it's like boiling a frog in a pot of water on a stove. You put the
Mhm.
frog in the pot and the water is tepid, and then you gradually increase the temperature. And the frog does not sense that, I'm going to be boiled to death. Whereas if you had thrown the frog into the hot water, it would jump out. So by gradually increasing the temperature, you can trap the frog without it becoming immediately alarmed. And so that's what happens when people are lulled into a cult group or an abusive controlling relationship. They don't see what's happening. And many times, the person who is bringing them into a cult, for example, is a romantic interest, a family member, a coworker, a friend, and there's already this element of trust. And that person that's bringing you in, they are themselves drinking the Kool-Aid, which, of course means they're in. They're all in. They're fully trained and indoctrinated. So they believe that what they're bringing you to is the ultimate good, something that
Right.
you will benefit from. And so, because they're committed, because they're enthusiastic and genuine, you are taken in and you trust them. And gradually, the group escalates its demands. And,
Sure.
and it doesn't show you the crazier aspects initially. For example, Keith Raniere kept secret this group that was deeply embedded in the group Nxivm that was called DOS, which was
Mm.
a sex slave inner circle that was run by certain women under the direction of Keith Raniere, in which he would brand women literally with a cauterizing
Mhm.
iron with his initials, and they would
Right.
become his slaves.
And it's a very Machiavellian principle too. I can imagine they use this like, yes, we're going overboard this time, but because we have to, we have to go these extra steps, and in terms of manipulating the other people to manipulate further.
Well,
Um,
it's always the ends justify the means. And,
exactly.
and, and so what Raniere and his people would say is we're fighting, if you will, for an ethical world. How sex
And this is
slavery
war.
is
This is war.
yeah, it's war. And everyone that is not part of our movement is potentially the enemy. And Raniere
Mm.
borrowed heavily from Scientology. So he would say, if you are not with us, you may be a suppressive person, an
Right.
SP, which is a label used by Scientology to describe people who are outsiders, who may be critical of Scientology or whatever. And in this way, Raniere separated people from their families. And this is also how Scientology has historically separated people
Mhm.
from families by declaring someone an SP. Or if you're associating with an SP, you might be labeled a PTS, a potential trouble source. And so in this way,
And then you have
Scientology,
PTSD when you leave. No.
well, Scientology is just a system of courses and curriculum that seems very educational at first blush,
Right.
but as you become more and more immersed in it, it gets, in my opinion, crazy. And if you were exposed to the most bizarre beliefs of Scientology initially, which you would not be, it would be withheld from you, then you would probably be shocked and you'd say, well, I don't want to be part of this. So what they do is a kind of bait and switch con. What they initially show you is not what is behind the curtain. That's what you're
Right.
going to find as you go through their course curriculum, and as they begin to, in my opinion, shut down your ability to critically think and independently evaluate what's being presented to you.
Makes total sense. And I had a question here. How common is drug use among cults? And are addictive personalities more susceptible to falling into a cult?
I think an addictive personality would be just one example of a vulnerability. And a cult will look to see what vulnerabilities you have that they can manipulate. And an addictive personality might be one. Someone who's kind of OCD might be another, or just the propensity of a person to be all in and fully
Mm,
committed to whatever they do. Because the cult group doesn't want lazy people. They want people that are high energy, that are going to work hard and make the group more successful, bring more money in, more members in, provide more free labor. Drugs are not typically used by cult groups, but there are exceptions. Charles
right.
Manson, for example, in his group, The Family, used drugs extensively. And there are groups today that use hallucinogenic herbs. They may use psilocybin or some other indigenous herb to induce a hallucinogenic state, as Charles Manson did, in order to find people in a more suggestible state where they can then
Mm,
manipulate them. What Manson would do is he would give his followers drugs, claim that he was going on a trip with them, but he would not take the drugs. And then he
mm,
would be able to manipulate them more easily. And that was one of his tricks. Paul Schaefer used tranquilizers on the people in Colonia Dignidad. So there are cults that have used drugs, but typically that is not something that they use.
Well, and I could see where maybe it wouldn't be wise to have a lot of drugs because typically, like there's the old saying about sex, drugs, and rock and roll, that it starts out with sex, drugs, and rock and roll, then it becomes drugs and rock and roll, then it becomes drugs. And, any prepared cult leader might want to watch out because the people might lose control and you could lose control of them because they get too deep into the drugs.
Well, many groups use hypnosis, trance
Mhm.
induction, meditation techniques to bring people into a suggestible state where they're more malleable. There was
Right.
a cult called Synanon that was very famous in California that was founded by Charles Diedrich. And it was actually a drug rehab compound where
That's right.
people where people were brought off drugs. It was Diedrich that coined the phrase, let today be the first day of the rest of your life.
You were
And
telling me about that, that it wasn't, you felt like that was one cult that wasn't designed to be a cult, but kind of over time slipped into being a cult.
yeah, I think that Charles Diedrich may have had idealistic goals where he himself he came out of AA, Alcoholics Anonymous. He had a problem with alcoholism that would later be, in part, his downfall. But he created a community of people that were trying to get sober, get straight. And the idea was to help the community and to help people. And he did help people for a period of time. But because he was an absolute authoritarian leader and he became an
Right.
object of worship with no meaningful accountability, as the old saying goes, power corrupts and absolute power
Absolute
corrupts
power corrupts
absolutely.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yep.
And that's what happened to Charles Diedrich.
Okay, back to the questions we have. Has OneTaste, a female sex cult run by a woman named Nicole Dadone, been classified as a cult?
In my opinion, the group fits the criteria. And if people go to culteducation.com, which is the Cult Education Institute database, there is a subsection about OneTaste. And also, if you go to the message board, the public message board that is attached to the Cult Education Institute, the forum, you can find many people who have had direct experience with that seminar training, commenting and talking about what is wrong, in their opinion, with OneTaste.
Okay. I don't know. I might have actually had somebody who was involved with that, Robert Candell, as a guest. I don't remember. Now I gotta look that up. Let me see. I've got here. It's more of a comment. So happy you're doing this interview. Will it be available on YouTube? Yes. You guys are experiencing it live. We can interact live, but later on, this is available, and I highly encourage you to leave comments below and ask questions. I'll try to reach out from time to time and check back with Rick and get those answers too. So yeah, this will be up in perpetuity, or as long as YouTube lives. Next one. Is there a personality type? We kind of went into that a little bit already, but is there a particular personality type, or is it just, anybody can do this?
Well, I once was speaking with the eminent psychologist Margaret Singer, and we were talking about David Koresh. And Margaret Singer was probably one of the most prolific writers about cults of the 20th century. And she was a professor of psychology at UC Berkeley and once nominated for a Nobel. And when I was talking to her, I said to her, "Do you think that David Koresh is a psychopath?" And Margaret said, Rick, I think pretty much they're all psychopaths. So what she meant was that most of the destructive cult leaders that she had dealt with were, at a minimum, it seems, sociopaths, but most of them were described as psychopaths. And David Koresh would be one example. So they can seem to be very charming, very glib, very well spoken, charismatic. They're often quite intelligent, but they lack empathy. They seem to be incapable of really experiencing empathy, though they may feign it. They have been described as malignant narcissists. That is, that they're deeply narcissistic, and they have grandiose delusions about their own importance, their omnipotence, their role in the world. And this seems to be the profile of a destructive cult leader. That is, that they are people that can be described as deeply disturbed personalities.
And the typical cult member, we kind of discussed before, but is there a choice person for that? You would mention, I think, even type A personalities are very susceptible.
No, I would have to say that when we begin to speculate about a profile, yes, people are vulnerable. We're all vulnerable to the lure of such a group, especially if we're going through a bad period in our life. For example, work isn't going well. Somebody you love has died. You are isolated from your family and friends in a new environment. You move to a new town, a new city, a new job. You're attending college as a freshman and living in the dorm or in campus housing away from home. You're lonely. People who are happy and feeling very positive about their life are less likely to be recruited than people who are going through a difficulty. So we all go through difficulties. So the key to the cult recruiter, and that recruiter is very predatory, is to identify people that are at that vulnerable state. And then good cult leaders can just smell it. It's almost like blood in the water and a shark, or the smell of blood to a wolf. So these are people who are very predatory. They prey on others, and they identify those vulnerabilities, those weaknesses. And as I said before, they drill down into them and crack people open. And they use those vulnerabilities to compromise a person's ability to think independently, and they basically debilitate people from the standpoint of being able to think as an individual, and they engender dependency upon them to make value judgments for you, for the people that they recruit.
Isn't that what brought you kind of into the business? As I believe your grandmother was in a nursing home, and a group went in, and I can't think of people more susceptible or vulnerable than those in a nursing home. But is
Yes,
that what brought you into it?
yeah, that is what brought me into it. My grandmother was 82. She was uh, when she was 18, she was a refugee from Poland, and she
Mm.
immigrated to the United States in the early 1900s through Ellis Island, fleeing, persecution. My grandmother, being a Jewish woman, and the nursing home that she lived in was a Jewish nursing home. And a group that specifically targeted Jews had members of their staff, people that work with this particular
Were they
missionary.
Jewish themselves?
They claimed to be, but they weren't actually. Most of the people had no Jewish biological background. And in fact, they were, I don't know what you would call them. They had an affinity for things that were Jewish, and the
Right.
organization called itself Jewish Voice Broadcast and was
Yep.
led by an
Makes sense.
ordained Pentecostal minister, Lewis Kaplan, who started life as a Jew but converted to become a Christian and a Pentecostal. And his ministry targeted Jews specifically for conversion to fundamentalist Christianity. And they covertly planted people on the paid staff of the nursing home with the idea of targeting elderly people that lived in the nursing home. And my objection to it when I found out about it from my grandmother, who was harassed by one of these people, my feeling was, look, you've got every right to preach what you believe and share your faith, but do it
Mhm.
in an honest, ethical way. Don't covertly come into this nursing home. Come into the front, through the front door, and say, I'm here to share my faith with anyone who's interested. And then if someone's interested, they will let you know, and you can go share and study the Bible with Mrs. Goldstein or whoever you want. But the way that they came in surreptitiously, in my opinion, and in many people's opinion at the time, was very unethical and underhanded. And that began my work with controversial religious groups, fringe movements, and then that led to destructive cults.
Well, I wanted to ask because I study also a little bit about confidence people or con men and women, and affinity cons are very, very prevalent. Surprisingly, Salt Lake City has a ton of cons because of the Latter-day Saints or Mormons, but any group that is very tightly intertwined is very susceptible for affinity cons. And maybe I'm wrong, but I've always thought of as a cult as a con at scale.
That is exactly correct. I mean, Margaret Singer once told me, she said, Rick, a cult leader is a con man. The only difference between a conventional con man and a cult leader is a typical con man runs a con and then leaves town. I mean, they take the money and they run. But a cult leader runs the same con on the same people indefinitely. Just on and on and on it goes. And Bernie Madoff, who of course ran the biggest Ponzi scheme I can recall in American history that involved billions of dollars, he largely was running an affinity con, and he would recruit people into his investment scheme that were very respected leaders in the Jewish community. And then they would say, hey, Bernie Madoff is great. And they would introduce him to other Jews. For example, Elie Wiesel, who received the Nobel Peace Prize for his work talking about his experience in the Holocaust and representing Holocaust victims from around the world. He was cheated out of money and built by Bernie Madoff. And in the Mormon church, what will happen is a con man who may have a Mormon background will try to recruit someone who is respected in the church, like a bishop or someone well known to other Mormons. And then he will bring him into the Ponzi scheme. And if you understand a Ponzi scheme, the people that come in early may actually make some money. It's the people that come in later that get cleaned out. So Mormons who see their bishop is doing well, and the bishop will say, I'm doing well, I'm making money. And the bishop has no idea that he's part of a Ponzi scheme. And so many Mormons have been exploited in this way because Mormons look up to their hierarchy as an example of being a worthy Mormon. And if a bishop is recruited and people they respect are recruited, they are more likely to listen to this person who's pitching the scheme.
That makes total sense. Now, somebody's reaching back in Gaslight. I thought he wanted the money, like she had money, and when he put her in the nut house, he got it.
Well, actually, it's even more complex than that. He was a jewel thief. Charles Boyer, the actor, plays a guy who was a jewel thief, and he stole these jewels, and they were hidden in the house that Ingrid Bergman lived in, and he wanted to find the jewels, and so he would search the house. And Ingrid Bergman would hear noises and she wouldn't know where he was. And he would tell her that it was all in her imagination and that she was going mad. And also she was an heiress that had a large fortune, and he wanted to get her money, the house, her property, but he was searching constantly for these hidden jewels that were somewhere in the house.
Okay. Now, somebody commented, Allison Mack of Smallville, actress, was second in command in DOS, and the brand was a hybrid of their names.
Supposedly, the initials were supposed to be Allison Mack and Keith Raniere. But the people who were being branded were told something entirely different, that it was some type of symbol. And they were horrified. They were horrified to realize later that it was Keith Raniere's initials. And just so that people understand, this was being done by a doctor with a cauterizing iron, with no anesthetic. And women were subjected to being burned with this cauterizing iron for as long as a half hour, to burn this symbol into their flesh near their vagina, and so this is what Raniere did, and he would kind of be privy to what was going on. He was, in my opinion, a sadist, and I believe a misogynist, and he wanted. He got off on it, and he would communicate by cell phone. He would see what was going on by video, and there were many of these women who were they were tortured. And Allison Mack, I believe, was victimized herself by Keith Raniere. I mean, she gave up a wonderful career. She lost most of her money, and she became his pawn. She became basically his deployable agent that he could use in any way that he wanted, and he did. He would use women in the most heinous ways to exploit other women.
That brings up an interesting ethical question, though. Like, most predators, or not most, I'll just say many predators who are out there, especially pedophiles, were molested themselves as children. And there is that side of it that obviously you feel terrible that they went through pain and were a victim themselves. But at what point do you have to say, yeah, you were a victim, but too bad you're a monster now? Would
Well,
that fall with Allison Mack?
yeah, well, I think with Allison Mack, it escalated over a long period of time. That she did not get to the point that she was a subordinate in the sex slave group overnight. He
Mhm.
pulled her in bit by bit, step by step over a period of years. And I think people lost contact with reality because Allison Mack and people like her were embedded deeply in Nxivm.
Sure.
I mean, I dealt with this cult for more than a decade, and Keith Raniere would harass me. I mean, he sued me for 13 years for having
Did you
information.
deprogram anyone from there?
Yes, I did interventions to deprogram, actually successfully, a brother, two sisters, and a husband of one sister, and then I was unsuccessful in getting their brother also out. And
Mm.
he continued with the group and lost a great deal of money and was horribly isolated from his family for years. And this is what Raniere would do. He would isolate people. And if you're in a group and there's
Mm.
no legitimate reason to leave, and you're being isolated from friends, from family, those are big red flags. And you should realize that you're being isolated not only from people, but from reality, because you're being cocooned by the group in a way that is like being in an echo chamber, a bubble, where you're not really getting accurate feedback or any
Sure.
alternative perspective. And in that way, a leader can control the way people think and the way they feel by controlling their environment. And that's why the most extreme cult leaders will create compounds so that they can cut
Right.
people off from the outside world.
Now, where are the members now? I mean, it's always interesting to see how everything was and how they live, but Ranieri's in prison. What about the group? Like the brother, now that all the time's gone by, is he out? Is he clean? Has somebody taken over the business, so to speak? Are the members still cultified? What is the status of folks?
I am hearing recurring rumors that there's a kind of ongoing camaraderie from the remnant of Nxivm, both in Mexico and the United States. And there are still people that cling to, the teachings, the training that they went through, and they invested
Mhm.
years of their lives, maybe their life savings in Nxivm courses and activities. So there's still some people that are there, but they don't seem to have a powerful leader to coalesce around with Raniere in prison. And keep in mind also that his immediate second in command, Nancy Salzman, is under house arrest with an electronic surveillance bracelet. And so
Mhm.
is Claire Bronfman, who financed Nxivm in large part and gave uh, probably over $100 million to Keith Raniere, uh, directly or indirectly. And she is under house arrest in her apartment in Manhattan. And then Allison Mack is under house arrest with her parents in California. And also Nancy Salzman's daughter is under house arrest, Lauren Salzman, and likewise an accountant for the group who did their books is under house arrest.
Wow, what a mess. Well, on a lighter note, Dirk posted the comment, I'm way too lazy to be in a cult.
Yeah, you have to be a hard worker and be willing to, hit the bricks and do whatever. And if you're lazy and you're not being productive, the group is likely to cut you loose. I mean, they're looking for people who can make their bottom line better. And the leader is looking for people that can meet some need that he has. And if you can't fill that need by working, by giving money to the leader, by being a meaningful recruiter, they might cut you loose. They don't want dead weight.
Fascinating. Now, somebody brought this up. I think it's interesting. JLW says, I heard AA can get a bit like that since they define everyone who drinks as potential problems. I'm guessing he or she is referring back to the Scientology and cutting off from personalities.
Well,
I don't know. That's an interesting question.
there have been a number of groups that have broken off from AA. We discussed one, Synanon. There was also a group called Endeavor Academy in Wisconsin that was led by an ex-AA participant who would use a lot of AA in his training of people in the Endeavor Academy. His name was Chuck Anderson. He's now deceased. So Chuck Anderson.
Oh, Chuck Anderson. Okay.
Yeah, and he was a guru, and he had a following in Wisconsin Dells, is where the group was based. So what happens is there may be someone who is using AA. They may drop into AA meetings and then try to find vulnerable people that they can siphon off from AA and recruit and bring out to their own group. And in a sense, they're a parasite of AA. And that has happened.
Good place to find vulnerable people.
Yes,
you mentioned they're looking for vulnerable folks. So AA would seem like AA, NA, sexual, not whatever, those would all seem to be a fantastic recruiting ground.
Yeah, it can be seen as like shooting fish in a barrel. I mean, if you have people in an environment like that where they already are saying, look, I've got a very serious problem, I'm here for help. And then you're kind of like a shark working a beach area, and you're going to grab somebody out of that group and then pull them into your own group. I've seen that happen. But AA in and of itself, I would not describe as a destructive cult, because they do not have an absolute authoritarian leader that is a living leader. They
don't make any money either. I don't. No. They're pretty poor for a cult.
No,
I think they pretty much. Yeah.
But there are aspects of it. You know, there are training people to have a kind of mindset in order to encourage their sobriety, and they do have sponsors, and that can be seen as somewhat controlling. But I would not categorize AA as a destructive cult. But I would recognize that there are cults that are opportunistically recruiting at AA meetings. And if you go to an AA meeting and somebody tries to pull you away and get you into something else, you should be very wary.
Somebody just posted too, and this is interesting. I don't know if you could say that it's a cult or not, but social justice is turning into a cult. Maybe that falls in what you were saying, that there may be some cultish behavior, but I don't see where there's like a single social justice warrior that everyone reports to.
Yeah, I think that what's happening in our political environment right now in the United States is, with this intense polarization and demonization of the left of the right and the right of the left, you have both sides claiming the other side is a cult. And I would encourage people to recognize that political parties have a democratic process. They do not have absolute totalitarian leaders, and that the people that follow a particular political party are not brainwashed like cult members. They're people that have sympathies, they have pre-existing ideas, philosophies that are in sync with the leadership and the party that they affiliate with. You may not like those ideas and philosophies, but calling them a cult is not useful. It's really kind of, it denigrates and dismisses the genuine suffering and the plight of people who are in destructive cults. And I don't think it's useful to label groups cults that are not cults.
Yeah, I agree. You should be able to define it specifically. JLW has written, I think narcissism is a big factor as well. I've noticed how friendship groups who have sociopaths kind of don't question that person, and that person starts setting unreasonable rules.
Well, if you have any kind of group that you begin to identify a leader that is manipulating and controlling the group, you may have stumbled into what is either a cult or becoming a cult. So when the leader is all powerful and people cannot question the leader, and when you try to question the leader, you're dismissed, you're denigrated, you're attacked. That may be the beginning of you becoming aware that you're in a group that is a cult or very cult-like, and you need to maybe step back and reflect on what kind of a group you're involved in.
Or that you're running. I mean, I think we all should be aware that we can be power hungry ourselves. We may say, oh, our little group of friends, and for whatever reason, people are looking up to us. We may be like, oh, I don't like what they said, and we don't accept them as our friend anymore. So maybe we need to be careful ourselves.
Yeah, well, there are people that are called social influencers or people online that have cult followings. And some of them become rather intoxicated with the power they have and have acted out badly. And others can be seen as online cult leaders. For
Mhm.
example, there's a guy, Nature Boy is his nickname. His real name is Eligio Bishop. And he recently was thrown out of Hawaii when he brought his relatively small cult following there to set up on the big island of Hawaii. And he calls his group Carbon Nation. And it's a weird group, but what is typical about it is that Bishop is an all powerful leader and that he determines what is right, what is wrong, and that the people in the group effectively see him as the focus of their worship and they follow him. He is the defining element and driving force of the group. And he recruits through Facebook, through YouTube, he has Twitter followers. Everything is online. And then he asks people to move in with the rest of the people in the group or support the group financially. And what we're seeing now,
Teal Swan.
yeah, Teal Swan is another example. What we're seeing now are people that can recruit, sustain, and collect money from a following and have a cult and not even meet people physically. It can all be
That's the
done.
ultimate, man.
Yeah.
That's the best. I mean, think about it. You don't even have to actually interact with people in that nasty flesh space. You could just do it online and just start collecting. Well,
Yeah.
I guess some preachers, you could say, have been doing it televangelist wise through television. So
Yeah.
maybe it's just the next generation.
Well, I think the televangelist, I would make distinctions regarding televangelists. For example, even though you might not like, say, someone like Jerry Falwell Jr. and his father, Jerry Falwell, or Kenneth Copeland, or one of the popular preachers, Benny Hinn, Joyce Meyer, they actually do not tell their followers, I alone can save you. So they would acknowledge that a person could be with another ministry, another church, and that what they're preaching is essentially that Jesus saves. Now, they may be somewhat predatory in the way in which they garner money from their followers and push their followers to contribute. And in that sense, they are like pioneers about these online entrepreneurs that we're talking about. That can be seen as cult leaders. But I think the televangelists are not going to say typically, you must belong to my specific ministry and follow me personally, or you will be lost. Whereas a cult leader will make that claim. And that is one of their definitive claims that would establish them as a cult leader, is that they define the group and that they are necessary for salvation personally.
Makes total sense. Now, I have a question here from Gavin Stone, and Gavin actually does military intelligence and things like this, so he's tangentially involved, I guess, if you will, with mind control and manipulation. Are there any small groups in particular that right now would be considered harmless, but you believe have the potential to become a dangerous cult in the near future?
Well, I would say racial identity groups that are forming.
Mm,
They may seem relatively benign. For example,
like the
it
Black Hebrew Israelites?
yes, the Black Hebrew Israelites. For example, the group Israelites United in Christ, the IUIC led by Nathaniel Ray, who is based in Newburgh, New York. They're creating camps across the country, and their
Mm,
message is controversial. They're saying that African Americans are the chosen people of God, and that white people are
right.
essentially devils, evil, and they demonize whites in much the same way that white supremacists demonize the African American community or Black people generally. So these groups, even though they may say that they're not violent, they have a historic propensity for violence. And they can, in my opinion, those are the groups that can become domestic terrorists, most likely. And in fact, some terrible tragedies have occurred from groups like this historically.
Like Symbionese Liberation Army.
Symbionese Liberation Army would be one example. Another example would be Timothy McVeigh, who
Oh, well, yeah.
who blew up the Murrah building in Oklahoma City, and who was very much involved with right wing groups.
Yeah,
In
that came out of the Turner Diaries and all those folks, right?
Yeah, he was involved with reading the Turner Diaries, which became kind of his Bible, and he was involved with various identity groups that could be seen as what I would think white supremacist or very extreme militia groups that were very angry about what happened in Waco and created conspiracy theories around David Koresh.
Okay, well, now we're at the 1 hour point, so I'm going to finish out with one question, which I think is very appropriate. Rick's book, Inside Out, is a very comprehensive study and easy read on this complicated topic. And also, the website I'd highly recommend too, because that's just sort of like the database. It's the IMDb of weirdos. Um, Definitely check that out. Are there any other books you recommend to learn more about destructive cults?
Yes, I have an 18-page bibliography in my book, Cults Inside Out.
Oh,
There is a very one of the seminal books about cults would be Snapping by Flo Conway and Jim Siegelman, and also Cults in Our Midst by Margaret Singer. And then there are the books that really explain the indoctrination process. That are seminal books: Thought Reform and the Psychology of Totalism by Robert J. Lifton, and also Coercive Persuasion by Edgar Schein, and Influence by Robert Cialdini.
oh, Cialdini's fantastic. I mean, he's definitely one of the top people in the world. What I like about Cialdini too, though, is he makes it a point of being ethical and saying, here's a cult type of behavior, here's an influence behavior, here's what to look out for and how to control it, which I think is very important. Now, Rick, this has been outstanding. I'm hoping that maybe you'll consider coming back again because I see that we're getting a lot of feedback and questions, things like that.
Sure, Eric, I'm always happy to come back. And I think it helps people to demystify this subject of cults, because I think so often we just see, the news report, and we don't really understand what's going on
Sure.
behind that. And I think that again, that victims of cults, it could be anyone. And I think we should not shame or blame the victims of cults, but instead try to understand the phenomenon. That is, how did they become involved, And what was that process? And how could it happen to me or someone that I care about?
I appreciate that too. And I think that we sometimes in media and things like that elevate them to too high of a magical power state. And really, a lot of them are just thugs and creeps who have tricked some people.
Yeah, or as Margaret Singer used to say, con men perpetually running the same con on the same people.
Perfect place to stop. Now, folks, if you like this, you want to get Rick back, please subscribe, please reach out, please share. And Rick, thank you so much for coming on.
Thanks, Eric.